Hello, murderers. It's Mandy. And today we thought we would start this episode of the history of Halloween off with a very fun story. This is called The Legend of Stingy Jack. Long ago, in a small village in Ireland, lived a drunkard named Stingy Jack. He wasn't held in very high regard by the townsfolk. One evening, Satan overheard stories of the devious deeds of Jack and decided he must have this fellow's soul. Jack may have been stingy, but he was quite clever. When Satan came to collect his soul, he successfully made the case that the least Satan could do was allow him to have a final drink at his favorite pub. After which, Stingy Jack left Satan on the hook for the tab. Jack suggested he turn himself into a coin to pay the bill, and they would be off on their journey to the underworld. Satan was fooled when Jack took the coin and put it into his pocket alongside a crucifix, thereby trapping Satan in his pocket. The devil begged and pleaded, and only upon agreeing to leave Jack alone for 10 years was he released. Exactly 10 years later, Satan found Jack stumbling home from the pub. With a heavy sigh, Jack looked at the devil, knowing full well that he intended to drag him to hell. Jack made the request of Satan to climb a nearby apple tree to get him a final snack to eat before the journey southbound. Satan, apparently still not as clever as Jack, climbed the apple tree. While Satan was climbing the tree, Jack carved a cross into the trunk, thereby trapping Satan up in the tree. The devil begged and pleaded, and only upon agreeing to never take Jack's soul to hell was he released. Many years later, when Stingy Jack took his last breath and died, Saint Peter refused him entrance into heaven for all his evil deeds. Satan refused him entrance into hell due to their contract. In one final parting gift, Satan gave Jack an ember ablaze with hellfire. Alas, Jack was stuck roaming the earth with only a carved turnip glowing with hellfire to light his way. When Stingy Jack ceased to be, Jack of the Lantern began. On Halloween night, keep an eye out for a restless wandering soul every time you see a jack-o'-lantern, for it may just be the hellfire glow from Jack's lantern.
There is a medicine story that tells of Crow's fascination with her own shadow. She kept looking at it, pecking at it until her shadow woke up and became alive. Then Crow Shadow ate her. Crow is dead Crow now. Join us as we attempt to look through the wandering crow's eye to find the gateway to the supernatural, to seek to know the unknowable mysteries of creation. Welcome to the Wandering Crow Podcast.
All right, murderers. Hello, it's Mandy.
It's JT.
And Cameron.
Welcome back. All right, guys, what did you think of this story, The Legend of Stingy Jack?
Well, what's interesting is that whole tradition started as they would carve out potatoes and turnips to ward off the evil spirits. And then with the story of Stingy Jack there, it turned into the jack-o'-lanterns or pumpkins that we do now.
Mm-hmm. What I find interesting about it is how kind Satan was. Like, he was so, accommodating. Sure, I'll pay your tab. Sure, I'll climb up the tree and get you an apple. Like, I just feel like that's not very satanic, I guess. I don't know. It's quite kind.
Devilish.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's got to lure you in somehow.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe he's not this bad of a guy. I would make
Satan
a deal
the
with this
seducer.
guy.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. It's just really funny to me. I was like, really? Would Satan do that, though? I feel like that doesn't seem right.
Maybe if he was really trying to gain your favor.
Yeah, maybe could be.
He uses all kinds of tricks to get what he wants, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was a fun one. I have some other stories that we'll tell later on. But so this episode, we decided we were going to talk all about the history of Halloween. And I felt so bored. So bored in the research for this one. Most of the time, not all of it.
I was so bored I started researching weird trick-or-treating stories.
Right, that might be good to go into too.
But only found one that was really creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should sell that one.
I will. We can get that. I mean, I would love to just be able to kind of go through a brief history of
Yeah.
how the day came about. I've done some research on the history of candy and Halloween.
So the story that you found, is that the same story that I found about the Candyman? Or
No,
is it a different one? Ooh, it's a different one.
it's a real life trick or treating scary story.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Let's power through some of the history stuff. So, okay. So here's the part that gets me a little bit confused is that I have seen sources that say Halloween comes from Samhain, and most people, Samhain, they would think Samhain because that's how it's spelled, Samhain.
Right.
But the actual pronunciation, I was right, by the way. I got corrected last time, but it's actually
I think I
Samhain.
might have corrected that.
Samhain, yeah.
Yeah. So I've seen sources that say Halloween comes from Samhain, and I've seen other sources that say Halloween actually started independently of Samhain and just sort of incorporated it in. So, because I've basically seen Christians taking credit for this, and then I've seen pagans taking credit, and I've seen some weird discourse on both sides.
From what I read, there was a transition when the Christian monks came into the Celtic area and started producing Christianity. They were a little jealous of the Samhain tradition and started the All Saints Day, which was essentially the same time period. But Samhain was like a harvest ritual.
Mm-hmm.
I thought All Saints Day took place before, though, like the night before.
All Saints Day is November, like the evening of November 1st, and then I have All Souls Day, which is November 2nd.
Oh, so it's the night after then. Is it like at midnight, or is it November 1st?
November 1st is All Saints Day.
Yeah.
And then Halloween is actually All Saints Eve, or All Hallows Eve.
Right.
And then you have Devil's Night.
What is Devil's Night?
You don't know that one?
No, I don't know that one.
Oh, Devil's Night. So that was in the movie The Crow. It turned out it was like a real thing, where the night before Halloween, people would set fires to buildings and like cause all kinds of havoc. And
I don't remember from the first Crow, the first one
with Brandon Lee.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Huh. I love that movie. I'm going to need to rewatch that.
That took place on Devil's Night.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the main villain had like this whole speech about it.
Okay. Well, I have this.
The idea becomes the institution.
Just for everybody, I'm going to go through it. So this is like basically a calendar of this is a calendar of the seasons that the Celts would have followed. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, probably not interestingly, because everybody experiences the seasons, every human in existence, no matter where they are. So shamanic wheels are basically calendars, and they are set to help track the seasons. And they also tell us, so like in the practice that I have, the shamanic wheel has layers of significance, and one of which is actually like a calendar, like an actual to goodness calendar to track the days and the months and to get yourself ready for what's coming next. So like in the Celtic calendar, you have what's called the solstice, and that is when, so like there's a summer solstice and a winter solstice. I don't know if everybody knows this or not. In the summer solstice, you have the longest day of the year and the shortest night. That is when the earth is tilted closest to the sun. And from that day on, each day is successively shorter and night is successively longer because the tilt is turning back. And that is a change of season. That is literally, it's going to start to get cool now. And the winter solstice is the opposite. You have the longest night and the shortest day. And then from that day forward, the days get longer, the nights get shorter as the earth is tilting closer to the sun. And then you have the equinoxes, which are halfway between each of the solstices on either side. And that is the day and the night is equal on both.
What's interesting about that is, I've been to Stonehenge, and the way that they, dig the henges is in that direction. So the directions are based on that calendar or those equinoxes or those days. So you have the specific entrances that are based on the summer solstice or the winter solstice, and they're opposite. And then
Mm-hmm.
the equinoxes are the side entrances here, and then you have the trenches, around. And then with the way that they set up the sarsen stones for those solstices, the sun would come through at those specific times for the different solstices and would cast light in different areas for
Mm-hmm.
whatever ritual it was they were doing in there.
Right. So you end up with the cardinal directions. Each
Yes.
solstice accounts for a corresponding cardinal direction, and each equinox is a corresponding direction. Now, in the shamanism that I have been taught, you have what's called gates, and they are the times that fall exactly equally between cardinal directions. So between the north and the east, you've got the northeast, and this is a really powerful gate between, because in the north, in the tradition that I'm taught, the north is the direction of winter. It is also the direction that represents death. And the east is the direction that represents spring and rebirth. So in the northeast is that transition time, and it's
Hmm.
considered to be a gate of immense power and change, because it is that place where you transition between death and rebirth, and something really important happens in there. And each gate is its own meaning and significance. So these gates are where these holidays happen. So Imbolc is the spring, and it's actually St. Brigid's Day, so St. Bridget's Day. Beltane is like for summer. And then there's another holiday called Lunasa, that's autumn. And then Samhain is actually in between the west and the north. And Samhain is considered like the winter holiday. Like this is a harvest time, and this is the start of winter. So this is the kind of a celebration of, and not just a celebration, but in those cultures, as far as we know, it was a time of asking the spirits, for the love of God, please don't kill us this winter. Please allow us to survive. And it was a time of making offerings to help gain the favor of those spirits to get you through the winter until the next holiday.
Is there any correlation to the full moon with those
Yeah.
directions?
Yeah.
Because
So go ahead.
we just had a big kind of interesting blue moon, no, like a super moon or full moon that just happened last month.
Mm-hmm.
That was a major sign of change. Like, be ready for change. It's a good time to have a change. It's a good time for change. That just happened, and it would have been about that northeast
Mm-hmm.
time frame, if you will, if that was a calendar in your circle there, which I find very interesting.
The wheel that I'm taught is 38 stones. So you've got the cardinal directions, and there's a stone in each of those, and then there's a center stone, center circles, and then there's like stones that go into these gates, and then there's stones in between each of the cardinal directions. In each one of these, there's 3 stones in between each cardinal direction, and each one of those represents a month, represent a full moon that falls in between.
Wow. Okay. That's crazy. Okay. So when I was in England a few years ago, there was another henge that I went to that was huge. It was like, there's a town in this henge. It's called Ovesbury. And they had the big Sarston stones from the same quarry that Stonehenge was at. And it was this henge was kind of northwest of the same quarry that Stonehenge was from, but they had those big Sarston stones in those slots around the henge, like what you were just saying,
Mm-hmm.
as far as the wheel is concerned. I find that very kind of coincidental and fascinating.
They say that those stones are made of like a blue granite, and the
Mm-hmm.
reason for that is because it kind of, what is it? It's kind of like a really good conductor for energy, is what they say.
Oh.
And so you can kind of feel something like a little different, a little bit more at peace, maybe, when you're standing next to them. Were you able to stand next to the stones at all, or were they
In
like,
in
did they
in
keep you away?
Osbury, I was able to. So in Osbury, it's the big Sarston stones, the big ones that were closer to the hinges, but these were not carved out like they were in Stonehenge. They were just kind of raw, and they were just different. And I actually got to sit on one. Now I wasn't as open to things as I am now back then. That was a long time ago, and so I didn't necessarily feel anything. I was just in awe, fascinated how deep the trenches were for this henge, and that the fact that they use like deer antlers and crude shovels to dig these big trenches, and they move these big huge stones, you probably by rolling along logs,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know that I ever felt the energy from that. But I have heard that people can take a coat hanger and put it into a certain like rune, or bend it into a certain direction and point it at the stones, and they'll get it shocked electrically.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
This is considered when you make then you make a stone circle in my tradition and in others, actually, thinking about it. Lots of other traditions have their own versions of a stone circle. And stone circles have been around in many cultures for thousands and thousands of years. Like they occur all over the world. And it makes sense because, again, we all experience the seasons and we all want to track the moons and we all want to make sense of what's coming and what's happening, right? So it makes sense. But in my tradition and in others, this is a way, if you do it right, you actually will create a portal. Like you will create a doorway with them, with certain prayers and different ritual actions. Even just like placing the stones and then activating them is really all you have to do. But what I wanted to say about Samhain, so Samhain is the winter holiday. So Samhain is literally that gate that occurs between autumn, the last of life, and winter, when we enter into death. So Samhain is that gateway between life and death. And it is a time where there's a really, really, really big transition, more noticeable than probably summer, spring to summer and summer to autumn. So these two, autumn to winter and winter to spring, would have probably been really important celebrations, both of them. And so the whole point of Samhain, the entire point was that festival, the harvest, making the offerings and taking advantage of that thin space in the reality and that thin energetic space to really supplicate yourself to the spirits and ask for their protection and ask for their leniency as the time of death comes, as the season of death comes, and there is no abundance, and there is, you're entirely reliant upon what you've been able to store away for the season. You're
I did
entirely
hear.
reliant upon the hunt. What?
I did hear. So I found something here that was sort of explained like where honoring the dead really came from with that, because this was more so about not dying,
Mm-hmm.
about the veil of that being thinned out. So it kind of related, but it wasn't quite there yet. The Romans, when they expanded their empire into the Celtic lands, they had a holiday called Feralia in late October that honored the dead. And so that, they believe, kind of intertwined with what was already there. I mean, they were already Christians at that point, but that holiday still stayed because it was popular with the people, and that kind of combined with the Celtic tradition, which also had a celebration
Wow.
right around that same time.
Well, interestingly, I think it was embraced the way it was because the Celts had a belief that because that gate was thin, they were more likely to be visited by the Fae and by other spirits and even like the deceased. And so there was a tradition of something called mumming, where you would dress up as a dead person in order to trick them. So they would think that you were already dead and leave you the heck alone. It was so they couldn't see you, which is kind of where the costuming came from. Even way back then, they had this tradition of which is another thing that ties into a lot of shamanic practice. Again, this is from many different shamanic practices, The shaman dresses in ceremonial garb to hide themselves from the spirits. It's a form of protection. The shaman needs protection against these spirits they're dealing with. And so their faces are completely shrouded and they're covered in different protective layers of like bells and charms, bones, certain cotton cloth, specific colors. And it's to keep the spirits from being able to track them and follow them home and hurt them later or do harm to them. So for me, like that makes like it's interesting to see those parallels that that's actually a belief that still persists in cultures that still follow these animistic belief systems. It's really amazing for me to that. And so it's kind of cool to hear that the Romans had that because it makes me think the Romans weren't always Christian. I believe that probably these are things that existed pre-Christianity even in those regions of the world.
Well, wasn't Christianity kind of developed by a Roman emperor to get control of the Christians? Like Catholicism came from Constantine?
Yeah, it was
Who,
organized. He organized the different because there were hundreds and hundreds of like books that
yeah,
could have made it into the Bible, but he actually had like a big
it
group
was
of
yeah, it
holy
was
people
called the
come together. What was that?
Council
One of
of
the Caesars.
Nicaea.
Yeah, one of the Caesars, he
Yeah.
came by and actually made it into the um, like official religion of the place just to unify the soldiers. But he couldn't get away with getting rid of their holidays because that was so ingrained into their culture that he embraced them as Christian holidays.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so how did okay, so we have All Saints Day, which we know is Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my question would be where did the like when did the transition happen from Samhain to the All Saints Day? When did that, because there's traditions from both that are practiced all over the world.
Yeah.
So when was there a merging of that? Was that when Christianity hit kind of England and
This is
Ireland
around
and
the
those
8th
areas?
century, from what I found.
My understanding is when they really were trying to get control because this is after this Roman emperor has like consolidated power and created one central book. This is the book of Christianity.
Yeah, we're
This is
talking like
what
a
we're going to
thousand years
practice.
later.
Yeah, they're out there and they're trying to convert the masses into the one right religion. And so my understanding of it, and this is called, there's a word for this. Oh my gosh. Shit. I can't remember the word, but they come out and they say, this is what we're going to practice now. These are the holidays. And then the local people are like, oh, that's what we got to do, huh? So then they continue their celebrations. They just say, oh, this is just, how we're choosing to celebrate this particular holiday. But what they've done is they've taken their holiday and disguised it with the name of the Christian holiday or the next closest thing. Damn it, what is that called? It's what happened with Saint Brigitte, and it's what happened with the Hat Man, with the Baron. There was some of this. Mother of God. This is killing me. Hold on. Syncretism. It's called religious syncretism.
Syncretism.
So
Never heard that before.
SYNCRETISM. And it's where basically like you've got a group of people who are being told like, no, your belief systems are no good. Sorry. So then what they do is they take their belief systems and they sort of mask them to make them acceptable, to make it so that the powers that be that are telling them they're not allowed to celebrate their holidays anymore are kind of fooled. And there is a possibility that there was a little bit of it going both ways, where the church was saying, well, actually, this is a Christian holiday. You just named it wrong. It's actually this, and this is the way we'll practice it to kind of. So there's a little bit of that. I've heard it said both ways, where the church will actually just basically, what's the word? Co-opt or appropriate those holidays and say, no, those are actually our holidays. See, this is the religion you want to follow. and turn it into something that they consider acceptable, or vice versa, where the people will say, no, we're still going to follow our religion, but we're going to pretend that it's actually yours. And so we'll sort of paint over it a little bit and we'll whitewash it so it sort of fits and we can still continue to do what we want to do. And I suspect probably it was maybe a little bit of both. Maybe a little, and especially if the Romans already had a very similar type of holiday.
JT, you said that you were researching the candy, right?
Yes.
Did you read about soul cakes?
Yes.
I did. Tell us about soul cakes.
So that's basically what kind of started the where did that go? The whole trick or treating thing, or the handing out of the candies. People would bake soul cakes.
That it wasn't from candy companies.
This was from I believe it was from the Samhain tradition.
Yeah, it is.
And I just had that up. Where did that go?
I mean, I just have something brief about how it was a medieval Christian tradition. The poor would visit the house offering prayers of the dead in exchange for soul cakes.
But soul cakes started it was a Celt thing, though.
It was a Celt thing. Yeah, it was Celtic. So, and it came across to the United States from Irish immigrants. And what I have is that they were just small round cake that resembled kind of a shortbread biscuit. And they were given out to solars who were mainly children and the poor. And they would sing, they sang and said prayers on behalf of the dead while going door to door.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how the whole tradition of trick-or-treating happened, was from these soul cakes.
And it's come and gone. Like, it's interesting how it seems like it waxes and wanes. It seems like it was brought back in, I want to say, like the 50s or 60s. Somebody sort of kind of brought that back. And then the thing with the costumes too has come and gone as well. Because that was another thing that was done in the Middle Ages with the church in Europe. You would dress up, because it was believed in Europe that until All Saints' Day, so All Hallows Eve was the last chance that the dead had to enact vengeance on their enemies. And so they were actually able to wander around and they could seek revenge on people who had harmed them in life. And so people would wear their masks and they would wear their costumes to hide from these spirits. And then when All Saints' Day came by, the saints basically, vanquished the spirits or pushed the spirits away, so people were no longer in danger. So this costuming thing is something that sort of lingered for a very long time. It's actually surprising how long these traditions of Halloween have been around.
Well, that's interesting to me, because you've got the potatoes or turnips carved, or pumpkins now, the jack-o'-lanterns now carved with a candle inside to ward off evil spirits, and then you're dressing up to hide yourself from those evil spirits, which is the whole kind of premise of Halloween. And this is like a long time holiday that's been going on for a very long time, and it's just morphed.
Well, and think too, disease was often attributed to spirits cursing you.
Mm-hmm, that's true.
So you would want to, right as the flu season is starting, you want to appease the spirits so you don't get sick and die.
Wow, that's crazy.
You guys, I want to show you this. Have you actually seen what it looks like? These turnips once they're carved?
They're great.
No.
I love them.
It's so terrifying.
It's so much better than a jack-o'-lantern.
So much better than a jack-o'-lantern. They're awful. Hold on, let me see if I can. Where is the damn screen?
We should do this as a garden club.
Oh, you should get those fake teeth and put them in there too.
Okay, let's see. Screen. You guys see that?
Oh my gosh, that is creepy. That looks like a mummified face.
It's awful.
So good.
It's the most
It reminds me
thing
of
I've ever seen.
salad fingers.
Oh, it does. Oh, it does look like salad fingers. That's also extremely creepy.
Salad fingers? I haven't heard of that.
It's an old thing.
We got a rabbit hole for you.
From the very beginning of the internet, when...
He's still around. David Firth is still making cartoons. And they're all getting million views.
They are, JT, they're bizarre. It may be a rabbit hole you don't want to go down.
Okay.
No, it is.
Well, okay, we're going to talk about candy and stuff, but I texted you guys a TikTok channel. It's the Nutter Butter
Yes,
TikTok
I don't have
channel.
TikTok, so I guess I need to open up an
You'll have
account.
you have to download it and go onto this TikTok channel and see
Okay.
what the hell they're doing. It is
I just got
weird.
TikTok because of last time. So
It
let me
is
see.
somebody's on something making these TikToks. Somebody's doing DMT doing these TikToks. They are weird. Like they're capitalizing on the whole Halloween thing and trying maybe to have a comeback of Nutter Butters in a really creepy, weird way.
That's an acid trip.
Yeah,
You
for
don't
sure.
even know which one I'm watching, but yeah.
I don't even know which one you're watching, but all of them are like that.
I don't have the audio on because it'll pick it up, but yeah, I don't think I need
the
to.
audio makes it worse.
Is that a foot? Why is there a foot?
There's one where you have a little like dollhouse when you've got two Nutter Butters and then the little round Nutter Butter that you can buy in the little package, and the house has like chocolate smudged.
It's like
on
fake
the
blood
outside
everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like baked blood, and then there's different scenes in the house with these cookies in a bed. It's like really creepy stuff.
Ew.
Well, here's the better one. It's just them at the front
Yes, that's them at the front door. It's just
Hey.
really so. Listeners, if you're listening to this,
Somebody's
go to TikTok
unhinged.
and go to the Nutter Butter TikTok page. They have an Instagram page too, but it's not as weird as the TikTok. Anyway, I found that today doing my research. I was like, someone's like, go see the Nutter Butter channel. What's going on there? It's weird.
Good find.
Anyway, where were we at? Sorry, that was total sidebar conversation.
Well, no, we started talking about candy, so that kind of
Well,
fits
that's
right in.
probably a perfect segue. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I did kind of a history of the candy, and in a nutshell, it started with the soul cakes, and instead of trick or treat, they would, say prayers or sing to the dead to ward off the evil spirits. That was also in Britain. They did the same thing. And then in the 1800s, taffy was a very popular candy here in America at Halloween parties. And then this is interesting too, and I've done the research on this, candy corn. Candy corn was, we'll have to go into this as kind of another part of this, but candy corn was invented in the 1880s by George Renninger of the I was going to say this right, Wonderly Candy Company of Philadelphia. But candy corn was designed to look like chicken feed.
Oh, it does look like chicken feed.
We'll go into that in a minute. And then of course, chocolate was a luxury item back in the early 1900s. And it was some of the candy producers or chocolate producers that made it more available to people. And that's when it started to become used in Halloween, but not as mainstream. There were still people that would do baked goods and different things like that instead, because there was still that kind of transition from the soul cakes to the candy. And it wasn't until really the 1950s that the candy manufacturers started promoting their candy specifically for Halloween. And then we go into the urban myths or the Candyman, which I think we should talk about right now.
Oh my gosh.
Is the Candyman.
So I always thought that the Candyman, so I always thought, we'll start here, that I think our mom used to tell us stories about razor blades and the candy, And that's why you've always got to check and never eat candy where the wrapper's partially open because somebody could have poisoned it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I thought in later research that was a myth. Well, guess what? It turns out it is a myth that it happens all the time and people are always doing it, because there's really only been a very, very finite number of cases ever in the history of Halloween candy where something bad has happened.
Yes.
But where it all started. All right. Here we go. This is called The Candyman.
Too.
This is from 1974. So on October 31st, 1974, a gentleman by the name of... Actually, it doesn't say. Does it say his first name? O'Brien. They're just calling him O'Brien. Took his 2 kids trick-or-treating. This was in Pasadena, Texas. His neighbor and the neighbor's 2 children also accompanied them. So after visiting a home where the occupant failed to answer the door, the kids got impatient and they ran ahead to the next home. O'Brien stayed behind. Eventually, he caught up with them and he says, "Hey, the neighbor actually did show up and he gave me these pixie sticks." And they were 5 21-inch long pixie sticks. And he says, he gave me these sticks. They felt really bad. They didn't answer right away. So here's a pixie stick for each of you. So he gives the kids a pixie stick. All of them. 2 to his own kids, not, 1 for each kid. So 2 of those kids were his and 2 of those kids were the neighbor's kids, right? So, and then upon returning home, he gave the last and final pixie stick to a 10-year-old kid that he recognized from church. So 5 kids in total get these pixie sticks. So before bed, his son Timothy asks to eat some of the candy, and according to O'Brien, he picked the pixie stick. He had trouble getting the candy out of the straw, so O'Brien helped him kind of loosen it up so that he could get it. When he tasted it, Tim complained that it tasted really bitter. So O'Brien, being the nice guy that he is, was like, "Here's some Kool-Aid. That'll make it taste better." So they mixed up the Kool-Aid with the pixie stick to wash out the taste. Tim immediately started to complain that his stomach hurt, and he went to the bathroom where he started vomiting and convulsing. O'Brien later claimed that he held Timothy while he was vomiting, and eventually the child went limp in his arms. Tim actually died on the way to the hospital. So they were able to figure out pretty quickly that it was the candy. It raised a lot of fear in the community, and lots of parents in the area turned in their candy to the police after these kids got sick. Initially, they didn't think it was this guy O'Brien. They did find out in the autopsy that the pixie stick that Timothy had eaten was laced with a fatal dose of potassium cyanide. That's the stuff that we inject into people's bodies to kill them. That's lethal injection medicine. 4 of the 5, actually no, it's not. Potassium chloride is what we use for lethal injection. This is cyanide. He basically gave the kid cyanide. So 4 out of the 5 pixie sticks that O'Brien claimed to have received were recovered by authorities from the other children. So luckily, none of the other kids actually ate that candy. The parents of the 5th kid got hysterical when they actually couldn't find the candy. They totally freaked up, and they ran upstairs to find their kid asleep, and he was actually holding the pixie stick. Like, they caught it just in time.
Wow.
The reason he hadn't eaten that pixie stick was the kid hadn't been able to open it because it was sealed with staples. According to a pathologist who later tested the pixie sticks, the candy consumed by Timothy contained enough cyanide to kill 2 grown adults, while the other 4 candies contained enough to kill 3 to 4 adults each. Like, he just loaded this stuff up.
Mm-hmm. And they used to have pixie sticks that were bigger, and they were like those big plastic tubes. So I imagine that's probably what it was.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Thick ones. That's why you couldn't tear it open.
Yeah. So initially, O'Brien said that he couldn't remember which house it came from. And then police became suspicious because O'Brien and his neighbor had only taken their kids to homes that were on the 2 streets because it had been raining. So they're like, "Well, why can't you remember? You literally only went to 2 streets." Then their suspicions increased after learning that none of the homes they visited had actually given out pixie sticks. Not a single one. Like, the families of these homes were able to produce the candy. This is what we gave. We didn't give out pixie sticks. After walking the neighborhood with the police 3 different times, O'Brien finally led them to the home where no one had answered the door. He said that he claimed that he had gone back there before catching up with the group. He said the owner of the home didn't turn on the lights, but did crack the door open and just handed him the pixie sticks. He says he only saw the man's arm, which he described as hairy. And it turns out that the house was owned by a man named Courtney Melvin, and Melvin was an air traffic controller at a local airport. He actually didn't get home from work that day until 11 p.m. He actually had an airtight alibi and had over 200 people who were able to confirm that he actually was at work that night. So they were very quickly able to rule out this guy, and they were able to determine nobody was in that house. As their investigation progressed, police learned that this guy O'Brien was more than $100,000 in debt. In 2023, the equivalent of that is $620,000. So he was very badly in debt. He had a history of being unable to hold a job. In the 10 years prior to this situation, he actually had held 21 different jobs. He was actually suspected of theft at his previous job, which is a Texas State Optical. He had been fired from there. His car was about to be repossessed. He had defaulted on several bank loans. The family home had been foreclosed on. It was a pretty bad financial situation. And he had just taken out life insurance policies on all of his children in the months preceding Timothy's death. In 1974, he had taken out $10,000 life insurance policies on both of the kids. 1 month before Tim died, O'Brien took out an additional $20,000 on both kids, despite the objections of the life insurance company. So in the days preceding Tim's death, he took out another $20,000 on each kid, so that altogether the various policies totaled about $60,000.
So he wasn't even going to pay off his debt.
No.
That wasn't even enough.
It was going to help take the pressure off, but it wasn't going to get him completely free and clear.
It's worth your child.
So they eventually, right? So his wife says that she didn't know anything about any of these life insurance policies. On the morning after Tim's death, O'Brien had actually called the insurance company to ask about how he could go about collecting the money. So the morning his kid dies, he's already on the phone with the insurance company. Police did eventually learn that he had visited a chemical supply store in Houston to buy the cyanide. And eventually the police were able to connect the dots and said, okay, we think that you did this. Sorry. So there was a trial. He was actually arrested for Tim's murder on November 5th, 1974. So just a few days later, like they were able to pretty much put it together pretty quick. He was indicted on 1 count of capital murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. Because remember, he handed out a total of 5 pixie sticks. Like this dude was willing to kill 3 other kids outside of his own kids to try to get away with this. Like he was willing to kill 5 different kids in order to get some of the money that he needed to get himself in the clear.
Wow.
He pled not guilty, but eventually they were able to locate a chemist that he had actually talked to and asked. He had actually asked this chemist how much cyanide is fatal. And they put together a pretty strong case about what happened here. And he was found guilty. It took the jury 71 minutes to sentence him to death by electrocution. Shortly after he was convicted, his wife filed for divorce, and she later remarried, and her new husband adopted their last surviving child. So this is where the urban legend comes from concerning a mad poisoner who handed out Halloween candy laced with poison, or the needles or candy apples with razor blades inserted. Like they all sort of came from this one story of this one evil, disgusting
and it all
human
kind
being.
of happened in the 1970s, which is when the candy companies really started pushing their sealed candy as a way to go for Halloween, which, yeah, that story was true, but the razor blades and things like that, was that a true story or a fabricated story? Because I haven't been able to find anything about that that's true. I feel like that was something floated out by candy companies to sell more candy.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Well, look at that. We got a conspiracy theory in the works.
Totally.
From what I can tell, most of this came from a Wikipedia article. I kind of put some different sources together for this. But according to this research, these stories about needles in the candy and razor blades in the candy apples, it says, quote, "These stories have persisted despite the fact that there have been no documented instances of strangers poisoning Halloween candy." So it's moved into the realm of urban legend at this point.
Do you guys remember the black and orange candy that was just wrapped in like a wax paper
Yeah.
that you would get?
Oh yeah, like the sort of taffy
Yeah, it was
kind
kind of
of.
like a peanut butter taffy or something like
Mm.
that. But those were always candy that my parents made me throw away because they weren't
They weren't well
wrapped
wrapped.
like the other candy was wrapped.
I could see that. I could totally see that. I remember when we would come home, we would want candy right away in the night. And our mom would yell at us and say, "No!" And she'd basically spend the whole entire night and go through each individual little piece of candy to make sure that it was all sealed and that nothing had been tampered with. Like she was
My
really she was
my parents called it candy sorting. You need to sort your candy and you need to, see what you got. They made more kind of a game out of it. Like, okay, let's sort our candy and see what's going on here. So you know what, oh, that's just a Ziploc bag, chuck it.
That's hilarious. You know what's really funny? That's the kind of thing that we should be doing. That's a goth game. Candy
Yeah.
sorting time. Let's see who got poisoned this time.
Oh, I got two.
Who's got the candy bingo card? The candy poison bingo card.
Oh yeah.
Man.
So I have a little bit more of the history here. So Halloween candy kind of entered the picture. It kind of dates back to the origin of candy corn in the 1880s. So I said George Reniger at Wonderloo Candy Company. He's the one that developed the candy corn. But then in 1900, the Goylitz Candy Company began making it in large quantities. And candy corn was designed to look like chicken feed. And I actually have an actual story behind the candy corn. So it was actually created. It was a mixing. It's a so this type of candy came out in the 1880s. It was a slurry of mallow cream and molding of confection into the shapes of pumpkins or chestnuts or turnips and other agricultural products. And so farmers were the ones that made up about half the American labor force, and the companies were manufacturing this candy for farmers. So that it was like, oh, this is a treat. Um, and then we go down here. Okay, so it wasn't until about World War I when I think that there was a shortage. Can I say the word? um, that candy really started becoming the thing of choice to hand out at Halloween because there wasn't enough sugar for people to make the baked goods to hand out. So it was
Oh.
less quantities, it was less quantities of sugar used to make the candy. So they kind of turned to some of these candy corns, and of course candy corns were like the original penny candy. um
That's a good bit of irony right there.
and then corn back then was not for human consumption. It was for good food for pigs and chickens. And it wasn't until the wheat shortages of that same time, 1917, that Americans started really consuming corn, making corn flour, cornmeal, cornbread. And
Really?
so, yeah,
Even though it was a native indigenous food?
yeah,
I had no
that's
idea.
this is coming from an article from the History Channel,
Wow.
that talks about the history of candy corns. So even after World War I, the candy corn was still maintained as associated with chicken packages, and Goylitz candy corns had a display of a rooster, and it was called King of the Candy Corn Fields, the rooster. And so it wasn't until about 1950 as to when the candy was really started dominating the Halloween market, where they really started advertising candy for Halloween, and that's where you saw like the Hershey's chocolate bar that came out, the Nestle Crunch bar that came out, and some of these other, like classic Halloween candy. That's when those really started to make their way into Halloween, because you can see those. You can go to the store today and buy one that has like a Mr. Good bar,
Mm-hmm.
the Hershey's bar, and the Nestle Crunch bar. So, and then I'm going to move over to this here because kind of the history of each of these candy bars was interesting. So in 1917, Harry Burnett Reese moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania. And we know Hershey, Pennsylvania was built by Hershey around his chocolate factory. Hershey is kind of the Willy Wonka of the time, because he built a whole town around his chocolate plant. And so Reese's was, he created the Reese's peanut butter cup, but Hershey's bought that from him, and started using the Hershey's chocolate around it. Let's see. 1963 is when Hershey acquired the H.B. Reese Candy Company. But it was, originally made with Hershey's candy from the beginning, Hershey's chocolate from the beginning, by the H.B. Reese Candy Company. What was the other? And then there's the Mars bar that launched, Frank Mars, that launched the Milky Way bar, which became a bestseller in 1930. And then he also introduced the Snickers bar, followed by, in 1932, by the Three Musketeers bar. I didn't really realize that these candy bars have been around for so long, and they're
Yeah.
still like staple candy bars of the day. You don't see many newer candy bars come out. They're more a version of these original candy bars. Like there's not been really anything new, except, I think Whatchamacallit came out back in the 80s, but then kind of lost popularity and then kind of came back a little bit, but then lost popularity again.
Mm-hmm.
But these originals, yeah. And then in 1941, he launched the M&Ms, and these are all, kind of the staple candies that we get now. And then candy corn, in the 50s, and that's when it kind of became the staple of Halloween. Was between the 50s and the 70s is when it really came as the forefront as a Halloween candy, but it wasn't originally made as a Halloween candy. It was made more of as a farmer's candy.
Okay. Isn't it kind of like hearing things like this, and it really highlights for me how much our social system has changed when candy was marketed for farmers, because didn't you say like 70% of the labor force were farmers or related to farming of some kind?
Yeah. So
The
all those candy corn style treats, because you get them in candy corn or pumpkins or different shapes, they were marketed to the farmers, the
right,
farm workers.
but
That makes a lot of sense for the fall aesthetic.
yeah, and it does. But what's crazy to me is like, what is it now? Like probably less than 10% of the country is involved in farming. So
Easily. Yeah.
I mean, it just blows my mind how quickly that has really shifted. And that I feel like that 70% is what it should still be. It's insane to me. Like, this is a different podcast topic, but it's insane to me how very few people are responsible for the survival of the whole entire nation, basically.
Yeah.
Like the food production of our whole country.
Mm-hmm.
That is just garbage. Man.
One bad storm in the wrong place.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting that the candy corn and how they were able to keep marketing it and still have it be one of the most sold candies.
But like, why?
In the United States.
They're
Yeah, I
so
know. It's not
gross.
very good.
People buy it as a filler,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the candy mixes in Halloween. Why? Because it's fall colors. it's to us, it's the tradition of candy. You have to have candy corns because it's a Halloween
Lewis Black
tradition.
even talked about it. Like an Alzheimer's patient. I forget that I don't like candy corn. So I grab some. Ooh, this will be good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Every time. It's so gross. Ugh. Okay. Well, candy.
So that's the history of candy in a nutshell. I mean, it could go. There's other things that happen. Where did that go? There was shoot. Because I think caramel apples are associated with candy because they used to give them out on Halloween as well. But that was kind of apples and nuts were a major treat.
Well, you know that. So, divination is a big deal on Halloween. And that's a tradition that persisted for a very, very long time. And divination was said to be so easy to do around that time because, again, the veil was thin. It was a very powerful time, a crossing of the dead and the living. Even non magical people would have a lot of success with divination on Halloween. And so there were a lot of different divination methods. And one of them, bobbing for apples, was actually a divination technique.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
So the girls would write the name of a potential suitor on an apple, and they'd put all of the apples in a big bucket, and then they'd bob for apples, and the one that they got was supposed to be their husband. So that was one. And then there was another one where I want to say it was like a banana peel.
Before we get too far, that goes back to the Romans.
Oh, does it?
Pomona on Feralia is a celebration where the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. Pomona's symbol was the apple, which was later attributed to Halloween tradition of bobbing for apples.
Oh.
There's another tradition where you can do wax, and I want to say eggs. Like you could crack an eggshell into some water, and the shape that it forms. It is same with wax. You drip some hot wax into water, and then it cools into a shape. And the shape is supposed to represent like the letters of the name of the man who's going to become your husband. Like it was all very like, who's my husband going to be? Kind of divination as far as I could tell. I bet there was other divinations happening, but we didn't talk about it because it would be a little bit less safe. Probably get you burned.
Speaking of wax, there was another tradition that happened in some of the parts of the United States called Snap Apple Night.
Okay.
Where you get a stick, a long stick, and you put a string in the middle. And on one end, you'd put an apple. On the other end, you'd put a lit candle. And you would hang it, and you would spin it. And the goal was to get a bite of apple without getting burned by the candle wax.
It's right up there with Rochambeau. That's awesome.
I might
People
bring
did
that
this.
back. Hey, for this Halloween party, I'm going to be doing cartomancy. So
what's
I'll be doing that.
cartomancy?
Cartomancy is when you can read like regular playing cards for
Oh.
divination.
Oh, fun.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to have my deck of gaming cards, and I'm going to do some tarot readings with those
Very fun.
as I'm dressed as the Sin of Greed.
Ooh.
Well, I do also have, tarot. I have a deck of tarot cards that are crow tarot cards. So maybe we can get into some wandering crow tarot readings.
I can do some divination.
So
I've got some things. Although I don't read tarot. I'm not very good at tarot, to be perfectly honest. I do different divination.
It comes with instructions.
Oh, fun.
I don't know. I played around with it a little bit, but I don't know enough about it to know. But it could be funny. So
Figure out how to loop that into an episode.
yeah.
We each do readings for each other.
That would be fun.
So you'll do tarot. Mandy, you'll do...
I just learned this very interesting Mongolian stone divination system, and I'm eager to practice that. It's very cool.
I'm torn between cartomancy and runes.
Runes is fun. I'm not very good at reading runes. Are you pretty good?
Pretty much everything that I do kind of works out.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Tarot, cartomancy, runes.
I mean,
They
it's
all
all
kind
just the
of
spirits talking to you. So if you're good at
yeah.
listening.
Something we didn't mention with the Samhain tradition is they would light big fires around and then
Yeah, we
burn
didn't talk about that.
bones in them.
Oh,
Have you heard that?
I did.
I don't think I did read about that. Why? What was the burning of the?
Um,
Was that the sacrifice?
They would light bonfires and wear costumes made of animal heads and skins to disguise themselves from the evil spirits.
Okay.
I don't. It doesn't. I didn't note what the bonfires were for exactly, though.
they were for like similar to like the flame of a jack-o'-lantern or something. It was to they would make. I mean, they would make big bonfires on the top of hills to ward off evil spirits.
Yeah, I thought part of that was to keep the fae away.
Oh, okay. Well, and
The
campfires do keep
shit.
away like the wild animals. So
Yeah.
a big bonfire with a ritual
Mm-hmm.
probably keep the fae away.
Yeah,
That
they
makes
called
sense.
them the Aoshi. My pronunciation's not great, my Celtic pronunciation, but it's AO and then SI with like an accent over the top of the I, the Aoshi. That was like a catch-all name for like fae, elves, deceased spirits, demons, all that kind of like non-human spirits. Like that was a time where they were just like crazy, like running around like crazy, and you were at
Oh,
risk.
okay, so here's what I have on the bonfires, and this is where the word bonfire kind of comes from. So this is pre-Christian history of the Samhain. This is because they would use this. This was kind of their New Year's, if you will. They would use it to stock up supplies for the winter. They would slaughter cattle and dispose of the bones in the bone fire or bonfire. And so they would get
So it's a
together and they would
sacrificial flame.
feast, they would drink, they would basically have a big party. But they
Most of them
also
are.
knew that they had an awareness of what they called the thin time of the year and the possibility of otherworldly visitors showing up at the party.
One of my earliest experiences with pagan holidays was this calendar, and it would show like the New Year's was actually a 2-week long celebration.
Oh,
So I kind of understand that even for this. So I mean, so we're talking like the waning, the full moon. I'm sorry, the waxing, the full moon, and the waning was all sort of part of that holiday.
okay.
It wasn't just one night. So the celebration, that's the pinnacle. So it makes sense that each of these holidays is really just a big celebration because that's the apex.
Right. So
Makes sense.
during this festival, departed loved ones were expected and welcomed at these bonfires, and the practice of setting out favorite foods for the dead may have originated as early as 2,000 years ago. That's unclear, though. But many other kind of spirits, some which never had human form, could also appear. Elves, fairies, the wee folk, sprites, and dark energies were just as likely to pay a visit as those ones longed to see again one last time. In the article that I was reading about that,
That's pretty cool.
the history. So
One of these days, we need to talk about the wee folk.
I would like that. There's actually really interesting correlations in Native American lore as well that are
Wee
totally
folk,
independent.
duende, hobbits.
So I'm getting all
Hobbits
this
are-
information from the World History Encyclopedia,
Oh,
History of Halloween.
very good.
So it's just kind of because it's kind of a it's kind of a culmination or a culmination of several different holidays over the years that have morphed into one single holiday, and people around the world celebrate one version or another, and we haven't even got into the Mexican version of that.
Well, what's interesting is Dia de los Muertos is actually can trace its roots back to pre-colonization in South America. So there's a lot of similarities, but there's also some pretty significant differences, and they independently arose of each other in the world, which is also extremely interesting to think about how that happened.
Right, because in Sweden they celebrate the All Saints Day, but they go and put candles on all of the graves in all the cemeteries, and we talked about that in the previous episode, kind of what they do there.
I did some very, very minimal reading on Dia de los Muertos prior to this. I had someone who was willing to be interviewed, and then they sort of disappeared. But Dia de los Muertos, it arose as a holiday. You're actually not allowed to grieve for the dead. Like, it's considered rude, I guess. And it's meant to be a celebration of gratitude and positivity and happiness and like remembrance, like happy remembrance of the times that your loved ones were alive, and leaving of offerings for your deceased relatives. So it's not meant to be scary. It's not meant to be black and dreary. It's meant to be very festive and happy and fun. It's a time of family. It's a time of family and ancestor remembrance. And that's just the very minimal amount that I read about it. So it was actually kind of interesting to see that there are differences. And Dia de los Muertos happens, it's a multiple day festival, which happens, see, my brain is not wanting to work, but I think it's the 1st of November through the 3rd of November. So it's not quite on Halloween. It's like slightly after, which, is interesting.
So I have something interesting too here that kind of plays into All Hallows Eve. This is kind of goes along with the Samhain thing, because how long the Samhain rituals were happening, we don't know. It's unknown.
Mm-hmm.
But some form of them were probably in place by the time Christianity came to Ireland in the 5th century. There's a hill of Tlachtka. I'm horrible at pronouncing.
Wait, hold on.
Stuff.
Can you spell it?
Tlachttga.
Oh yeah, that is weird. What language is this word from?
I think it's from Ireland, from
Irish.
Celtic or
Tlachtka.
Or the translation is Hill of the Ward, and this is in the county Meath, which is the site of the bonfire lighted on or around the 31st of October, signaling the beginning of Samhain festivities, when it was answered by the much more prominent fire from the Neolithic site of the Hill of Tara across from it. Archaeologists from the University of College Dublin have dated the excavation earthworks to 200 CE.
Whoa. Okay.
What is 200 CE?
Common Era.
Common Era.
And so this is so my understanding of Common Era is the way that we move away from Christianity in the delineation of the year. So you've got BC, before Christ, AD, after death, CE replaced AD. And I think the start of CE might be, I don't know, maybe like a year or two different, but basically it's they've renamed. It's not AD anymore after death.
Oh, okay. So it's
CE.
like 200 AD. Okay. So it was used. That site was used for ceremonial fires over 2,000 years ago, and the hill was named for the druidess. How did you say that again?
I'm guessing Tlachtka. I don't know.
Tlachtka, daughter of the powerful druid Mug Ruith, who traveled the world learning his craft. She was raped by 3 sons of Simon Magus, infamous for his confrontation with St. Peter in the biblical book of Acts 8:9-24, and gave birth to triplets on the hill that bears her name before dying there.
Aww.
The inclusion of a biblical villain in her story obviously places the legends in the Christian area and aligns with Tlachtka with St. Peter insofar as they shared a common adversary. And scholars believe that Tlachka's story, like many other Celtic legends, was Christianized after the coming of St. Patrick to Ireland and her rape by the sons of Simon Magus was adopted to a pre-existing account.
Yeah.
So I found
Syncretism.
that interesting with all, kind of some of the Samhain
Lore.
stuff got mixed with Christianity, and kind of a lot of that ritual stuff got lost.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to hear about why witches might fly on broomsticks, maybe?
Sure.
This is kind of a fun one. So, this comes from history.com. This is a Halloween facts, traditions, and legends. So, apparently, the association between witches and brooms might have its roots in a pagan fertility ritual, in which the rural farmers would leap and dance astride poles, pitchforks, or brooms in the light of the full moon to encourage the growth of their crops. So they were just like jumping over these things. The broomstick dance became confused with common accounts of witches flying through the night on their way to orgies and other illicit meetings, as witches do. And and it sort of evolved and grew from there. I thought that was fun. That's another way back when.
Foolish Christians.
Okay. Let's
Yay.
fly our brooms to orgies. Great.
I mean, I can get like orgy, fertility, whatever. And I don't know. Yeah,
I'm used to the Cocapelli because I'm from Arizona, so that's my fertility stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I find that funny.
I have some Halloween stories. Let's see.
Well, we're an hour and a half in, roughly.
We probably don't need stories. I could use these for minis.
Yeah, I have a story that I want to read out for a mini. It's kind of a long one, and so it's probably a good 15 minutes of a read, but I'll need to read it over and over again. Thanks for listening, murderers, and join us next time on The Wandering Crow.
Damn it.
Caw, 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 caw. I just was up in the